we come to a weekend like this, a session like this, and we're concerned with our coupleness. We want to be strengthened as a couple when we take the time and effort and the expense to invest in a day like this. We're saying we want to be strengthened as a couple. Well, before our coupleness can be strong, we have to make sure that our relationship with God as individuals is taken care of. And I know Steve is thrilled that I have let God do a work in my heart. Before we ever got together, God began a work in me that it really benefits Steve that God has done this. I was raised on a farm in West Virginia, in rural West Virginia, and I remember when I was 5 years old, a summer day, and it's my first recollection, a preacher came to our house. And at the time, we were an unchurched family, and I could tell Mom and Dad were really impressed and honored that this preacher had come to visit. Mom invited him into the front room, and she was going to go into the kitchen and get him a glass of water. And she left me in the room with that preacher. And he showed me something that day that would change my life forever. He showed me the old classic picture of Jesus knocking at the door. You remember that picture? I remember it being about the size of my hand. It was probably a wallet-sized picture, but he pointed at Jesus and he said, "That man loves you." I had never heard anything like that. And I remember as a little barefoot, dirty-faced Appalachian kid looking at that picture of Jesus and thinking, if he loves me, then I love him. Just made that decision right on the spot. Unaware I was fulfilling 1 John 4:19 that says we love him because he first loved us. But the seed was planted that day that Jesus loved me. There's no way I could have never known how important that decision was and that knowledge that Christ loved me, because I was in the beginning of the summer. By the end of that same summer, when I was 5 years old, I would be cruelly raped by a man who worked for my father. And that act of betrayal and violence sent me on a downward spiral that took me decades to recover from. I remember being in the trial that fall, and I remember the judge saying to the people in the courtroom, "It would be a shame to disrupt this man's life for something she will forget." That was just the mentality. He got a very light sentence, and they told my parents, "Take her home and help her forget what happened." And so my parents took the advice of the people who should have known, and we came home, and it was announced in the family, "This will never be spoken of again." And it wasn't. There was only one little problem. I never forgot. And that sadness and that woundedness in me as a child began to grow. And I remember having just a sadness come over me. I would go out on the side of the hill on that farm, and I would pray, "If there is a God, then kill me. Don't make me live like this." I knew there was something so wounded in me, so broken, that I couldn't imagine continuing to live like that. Well, that's the sad part. Let me tell you the good part. When I was 18 years old, I heard the rest of the story, that not only did Jesus love me, but when I was 18, I heard that he loved me enough to die for me. And we made the great exchange. He took my desire to die. He took my bitterness and the infected heart that was so sad, and he gave me his life. And he healed my broken heart. And he took me through a series of, through the Word, began to heal me and show me how to forgive my offender. And we'll talk about that later. I had to let God do that work in my heart as an individual before we could ever be a couple and be whole. We look at each other when we're engaged or first married, and we say, "I'm going to make you happy. I'm going to make you always feel loved and significant. I'm never going to let you lack. I'm going to make that promise." And you know, that's a sweet promise. And we mean every word of it, and we're totally incapable of keeping it. We cannot do what only God can do in each other. I can't fix Steve. He can't fix me. But you know, as a couple, we can create an atmosphere in our home where it's easier to hear God. We can't do the work, but our job as a couple is to create an atmosphere where Steve can hear God more easily, and I can let God do that work in me more easily because we're not obstructions to one another.
If there's anything in your heart that even similar to maybe what Annie's described, or maybe something else, may we encourage you to be brave enough to open your heart to the Lord and let Him look into your heart and see if there be a way that's not committed to Him, so that as we, as Annie mentioned, individually give our hearts to the Lord, we can draw close to Him and then closer to one another. Hey, grab this. Here's a picture of what we're talking about. This is a wagon wheel an Amish gentleman in Indiana made for us. This is a picture of a healthy home. Christ at the hub, and every member heading toward the hub. And look what happens as, even if you're opposites in personality, as you draw close to Christ, you draw close to one another. So simple, but so sometimes hard to do. It takes a lot of courage to open our heart and let the Lord deal with things that, like Annie's talked about. Another way to address this issue is through this lyric. But listen closely and see if this is something that you'll understand.
My heart is like a house. One day I let the Savior in. There are many rooms where we would visit now and then. But then one day He saw that door. I knew the day had come too soon. I said, Jesus, I'm not ready for us to visit in that room. 'Cause that's a place in my heart where even I don't go. I have some things hidden there. I don't want no one to know. But He handed me the key. Tears of love on His face. He said, I want to make you clean. Let me go in your secret place. The door, and as the two of us walked in, I was so ashamed. His light revealed my hidden sin. But when I think about that room now, I'm not afraid anymore.